Exhibit A in Senator Schumer's declaration that we are in a constitutional crisis rests in the courtroom of Judge James Boasberg. He's the federal judge who ordered a halt to deportation flights last weekend that the Trump administration defied. At a hearing on the matter yesterday, Judge Boasberg said he's still trying to figure out whether the Trump administration deliberately defied him and warned, quote, "I will get to the bottom of whether they violated my order, who ordered this, and what the consequences will be." Boasberg also questioned President Trump's use of the Alien Enemies Act, calling it, quote, "incredibly problematic and concerning." Trump has invoked the wartime law to deport Venezuelan immigrants accused of gang membership without due process. But Trump suddenly claimed yesterday he didn't actually sign the Alien Enemies Act.
I don't know when it was signed because I didn't sign it. Other people handled it. But Marco Rubio's done a great job, and he wanted him out, and we go along with that.
Just so we're clear, there on the right side of your screen, that's Trump's signature right there on the line, sitting there in the National Archives. The White House is trying to explain by saying Trump meant the original Alien Enemies Act of 1798. Sure, Jan. Joining me now, Ankush Khardori, former federal prosecutor and senior writer with Politico magazine, and Mark Joseph Stern, senior writer with Slate. Gentlemen, welcome back to the Saturday show. So, we showed some of the video, Mark, coming out of El Salvador with the Venezuelan immigrants who were deported there. And you had a piece in Slate with the headline, "We're finally seeing the evidence against the migrants deported by Trump. It's unbelievable." So what did they say the evidence they had against these people was, and what actually do they have?
So immigration authorities have claimed that many of the men put on these flights and sent to perform hard labor in El Salvador were members of the Tren de Aragua gang in Venezuela, and their evidence lay with tattoos that the men had on their bodies. ICE agents testified that the tattoos demonstrated or proved membership in this gang. But when lawyers actually got a look at the so-called evidence, what they discovered were the most benign and innocent tattoos that you could imagine, which had absolutely no connection to gang membership. A professional soccer player was accused of being a gang member because he had a tattoo of a soccer ball. Men who had tattoos commemorating grandmothers or daughters or other family members were accused of having gang affiliation. Roses and other simple, innocent images were essentially rebranded as gang affiliation. It's absurd, and I think it shows why this administration did not want to grant these men any due process, because if they had it, they would have easily proved that they were innocent.
So then, Ankush, I mean, I keep coming back to this question basically in every interview when I'm talking to lawyers or attorneys general, as I did in the last block. What recourse do those migrants have now that they are in El Salvador and accused of doing things that we have no idea they actually did?
Well, this is actually one of the most disturbing elements of this, because this is sort of like almost like a Guantanamo Bay type arrangement, if we harken back to the war on terror, kind of a legal black hole. The administration, well, first, they have their lawyers in D.C., but it's unclear what the remedy would be, even if they prevail. The administration has said they can file habeas petitions. I don't understand how people in a foreign prison could possibly coordinate with their lawyers to file good habeas petitions.
Can you, for the non-lawyers, what's a habeas petition? Does it mean they'll show up in person?
No, it's the most basic kind of petition that you can make to the government, which is that you're being wrongfully detained, and you're asking for the reasons why, and you're asking to be released. It's the most elemental of protections that we have against wrongful imprisonment. But I've never heard of it being sort of effectively used by someone in a foreign prison. And, you know, my worry is, you know, even if this gets down to, you know, much further down the line, and there's some sort of order that, say, requires that these people be pulled back, or that requires some process to be imposed even extraterritorially, that the administration will find it very, very hard to comply, even if they want to.
Mark, same question to you, because this gets to the bigger question here, and gets to what Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer says in the interview with Kristen Welker that'll air tomorrow on Meet the Press. where she asks him flat out, are we in a constitutional crisis? And he says, yes, we are. The Attorney General of New Jersey and the Attorney General of Minnesota both said we are in a constitutional crisis. I mean, do you think we are in one?
I certainly do. I know there's no set definition of a constitutional crisis, but I'm not sure what else to call it when the administration is defying court orders and then boasting about it on TV and social media. You know, Judge Boasberg ordered the government to turn around 2 planes that were flying migrants to El Salvador. He said in no uncertain terms, turn those planes around. The administration thought about it. It refused. And in quotes to the media later said, essentially, we want to tee this up as a test of the court's power and limits. And so I think that the administration is trying to engineer a crisis around this case because it thinks that it has the public on its side, and this will be a fight that it can win against the judiciary.
Ankush, let me have you listen to something. This goes back to Tuesday, Trump interview on Fox with Laura Ingraham. Just watch.
I never did defy a court order.
And you wouldn't in the future?
No, you can't do that. However, we have bad judges. We have very bad judges, and these are judges that shouldn't be allowed. I think at a certain point you have to start looking at what do you do when you have a rogue judge.
There's always an escape hatch when Donald Trump says anything about anything. At first, no, you can't do that, meaning defy a judge's order. But then, however, and then the big explanation, the big caveat is if you have rogue judges. And as we have seen, rogue judges are judges who rule against Donald Trump no matter what. So then what does that say about the rule of law in this country?
Well, it's very deleterious. It undermines faith in our judicial system. It undermines faith in these judges' rulings by suggesting that they're simply partisans because they're ruling against him, which is not the case. I think Judge Boasberg's handling of the case so far, I think, has been unimpeachable, given the very challenging circumstances in which he finds himself, in the very obnoxious way, frankly, the Justice Department has been litigating in front of him, filing these ridiculous filings, like with all kinds of bizarre language and terrible writing, I must add. But, you know, the fact that he's moved to, so focused on impeachment, that's never going to happen, as we all know, because there will never be a 2/3 majority in the Senate that will convict anyone, even if the House were to impeach someone, because there will not be a dozen plus Democrats to go along. So I think this is partly a part of a public pressure campaign, an escape valve type thing for supporters to say, look, it's not my fault, it's these rogue judges, and possibly an effort to sort of intimidate them.
Okay, so I'm watching Judge Boasberg. What's he gonna do? I mean, civil contempt? Then how do you?
You mean if he were to conclude that the government had unintentionally defied him? I think, as a practical matter, these judges have very actual limited recourses because the most potent sanctions, things like criminal contempt, require the involvement of the executive branch to imprison people because they control the U.S. Marshal Service, they control the Bureau of Prisons.
That's criminal contempt.
Civil contempt, it's the same thing because even though you don't need a prosecutor to prosecute the case, you still need the Marshal Service to take the person from the court to the prison, and the prison is still run by the Bureau of Prisons. So I think, as a practical matter, these are still potent sort of avenues for redress. Judge Boasberg will need to be focused on targeted sanctions, focused on the individuals who may have misled him and the lawyers, up to and including fines, including escalating fines if they don't comply with orders for more disclosure, and potential referrals to bars if he does conclude that lawyers misled him.